Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
We hope you enjoy listening to this podcast of St. Louis on the Air, brought to you by University College at Washington University, with undergraduate and graduate programs part-time, evening, and online. University College at Washington University, offering world-class education within reach.
And welcome back. If you're a fan of theater in St. Louis, then the name of Joneal Joplin is a familiar one. The veteran actor has performed scores of times here and across the country, more than 100 times at the Repertory Theater in Webster Groves alone. Anywhere there's a stage in St. Louis, he's probably been on it. Tonight, the Webster Groves Arts Commission is honoring Joplin with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and Joneal Joplin joins me in studio. Great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in, and congratulations.
I appreciate it. Thank you. It's good to see you again, too.
This doesn't mean the end of a career, does it?
I certainly hope not.
What's on tap for you in the near future?
Well, I just finished doing a show in Cincinnati at the Cincinnati Shakespeare Company. The first time I'd ever gotten the chance to do a funny thing. I happened on the way to the Forum.
Aha! We talked with Stephen Sondheim yesterday.
That's
he was sitting right where you were sitting.
I'd love to have met him, but
yeah, well, he was an interesting fellow to talk to.
I bet he was.
A little bit crotchety at times, but we'll give him that. He's 88.
I was going to say, aren't we all just a little crotchety?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Boy, is there a stage that you haven't appeared on in the St. Louis area?
I've never done anything at stages, interestingly
really?
enough. I had, I was asked to a couple of times, and both times it fell out because of other commitments that I had and wasn't able to do it. But
well, there's still plenty of time.
There's
to do
still
that.
time, yeah. As long as they're interested, I am.
How many credits do you have? I mean, we're going back 50 years or so.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more.
I've been in Actors Equity for 51 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, have you kept a list of all the credits you have over these years?
Nah, I mean, I'm sure there's a way somewhere back there. I know that I've done something like 215, 220 shows in St. Louis.
Wow.
101 at the Rep, 66 at the Muny. So,
why St. Louis? I mean, you have performed in various parts of the country. You're not from St. Louis.
No.
And yet this is your home, and this is where you basically where your base is.
Yeah. Well, we came here in 1972 from New York to do one show at what was then the Hilton Repertory Theater of Mice and Men. And my daughter was maybe 2 months old at the time. But we just came here to do the one show, and they asked if I would be interested in staying to do another show, and I did. And after 3 of them, I said, "Are you interested in having me here as part of the company?" And they said, "Oh, if you would be interested, yes, we would." So in February of 73, I went back to New York and packed everything up in a Beacon's moving van and moved here and never looked back.
How busy were you in New York?
Not that busy. I was one of those actors. We were there for 9 years. And I think in those 9 years, I only did one show in New York, and that was Treasure Island at a children's theater. Mm-hmm. And everything else was, moving out of New York to go someplace else to work. And that was, to a great extent, that was the case. And during that time period, that would be your base, and you'd audition there for shows that were going on everywhere else. So that's pretty much what I did, was worked everywhere else but New York.
With a lot of competition in New York for those jobs.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories was I did not have an agent, so I always went to open calls. Mm. And you got the information from the trade papers as to what they were looking for. And they were looking for a man around 30, hopefully somebody from the Southwest. Mm-hmm. I'm from Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Somebody over 6 feet. I'm 6'1", mm-hmm. Slender, ginger hair, and a bass baritone. This is me.
Yeah.
They're just asking for me. And I got there, and there's 300 guys that fit the description. And it turns out they ended up hiring a young Italian actor that the director had worked with before. So,
who probably didn't have ginger hair.
No, did not. No, and he was about 5'9", so it just went against everything they said. But that's when you understood what you were up against.
Do you audition anymore? Are you well beyond that point?
Well, I still do, yeah. When often it will be because it's a director I've not worked with. The theater has recommended me to the director, but they still want to listen to what I have to do, and it's fine. I don't mind doing that. It's still, for me, it's a difficult thing to do, and it's one of those things that really rankles you to have to go through it. But nonetheless, you understand that.
Well, I just can't imagine going through that sort of thing. And one of the things you have to be prepared for, just as you've indicated, is the fact that most of the time you're going to be rejected.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You have to deal with that.
Yep. Yeah, it's I guess the worst rejection I ever got was I auditioned for something, and I felt that I'd really auditioned well. Mm-hmm. And the director said, "Thank you very much for coming in," and handed me back my photograph and said, "You probably want to hang on to these. I know they're not cheap." So I thought that was about as total a rejection as you could possibly get.
I think about this commercial that is playing a lot on television now. This fella who's going to audition for a beer commercial. Uh-huh. Have you seen this? And he's doing all these exercises and telling everybody he's going to be doing this commercial.
Yes.
And he finally gets there, and they put him in this cattle call with about 500 other people. It's a very humorous commercial.
And he's an established actor too. So it's,
right. Yeah. What got you into it? A boy from Oklahoma getting into this field.
Well, I started very young, actually. I was about maybe 5 years old, and there was a lady in Ponca City, Oklahoma, who taught what was at that time called self-expression lessons. And basically what she did was she helped you, stand in front of the public, learn recitations and perform them for the Elks Club or the Kiwanis. So I started doing that at about 5, and I continued to do it through high school. But my real interest at that time was medicine. And so I went to Phillips University in Enid, Oklahoma, carrying a major of medicine and theology, planning to be a medical missionary, but was involved with quartets and theater. And when I finished my pre-med, I was accepted in the University of Oklahoma School of Medicine. But the president of the university called me in, and I often toured with the promotional quartet that I sang with. So we were on a first-name basis. Mm-hmm. And he invited me in, and he said, "I just wanted to know that you had the lowest grade point average for anyone ever from this school getting into a med school." So I thought that here it comes. He's going to say, "You're going to have to decide what's more important." And he didn't say that. He looked at me and he said, "You're going to have to decide which one you can best do without." Uh-huh. And I went home that summer and thought about that, and I thought, I can't do life without theater. I just can't do it.
Yeah. And the singing has held you in good stead as well, because you have been in a number of musicals, as I understand it.
Yeah, I used to do even more when I was younger. Of course, I was a Rodgers and Hammerstein baritone, so you got to do all the Curleys and those roles. But as you get older, there are fewer and fewer singing roles available. Sure. I think the last time that I really got to sing was when we did Man of La Mancha for Insight Theater.
Well, and looking over that list of credits, and they're right there online. You can just scroll through all of them. It's just amazing the wide variety of things that you've done. I'm not even sure what the question is, other than the fact that with that variety, is one more difficult or easier than the other?
That's one that's a difficult. It's like asking which one is your favorite show. Mm-hmm. There are some you just can't not list. Mm-hmm. So I think that certainly La Mancha was one of the ones that I will always think of as a favorite. But Willie Loman, of course, in Death of a Salesman, and King Lear, they're all right there at the top. And fascinatingly enough, so many times I'll meet someone, especially someone in their 30s or 40s. And they'll say, I've seen you on stage, but I just found out the other day that you were Mr. S in The Letter People. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be the most exciting thing for people to discover, is that I was a voice for The Letter People.
Is there anything you wouldn't do?
Well, I always said that I wouldn't do nudity on stage unless it was definitely a comedy.
I get it. I get it. There's not even a punchline necessary.
No.
How about film and television?
And I've done maybe 5 movies. 4 of them were made for TV. The other one was an HBO movie about Truman that I did with Gary Sinise. And I enjoy film work, but it's not the same as theater. One, it's not in the hands of the performer. You know that there's going to be some editor somewhere with a director sitting there cutting the stuff apart that you filmed, and you may not get the best scene that you felt you had. That may not be the one they choose. So you just don't feel like it's really in your hands as a performer.
What about taking energy from the audience? You hear that a lot from film actors who say they like to do stage work because then they have that to and fro.
Oh, it's very much true. I think that, and it's also that difference about theater is because it is such a unique experience every time, not just for the actor, but the audience, of course, too. An audience can come and see a show 3 times, and they're going to see 3 slightly different shows because they're just never going to be the same. And so I love that uniqueness to it. And you love having the audience there to respond. And I guess the other part is that I still think of myself more as a storyteller than I do an actor. I don't feel like I'm acting unless there's an audience out there.
I guess the people you're acting with would really make a difference, too. I mean, there has to be some kind of symbiotic relationship going there, or it won't work. Some sort of chemistry.
Very, very much so. And I've done basically one-man show. We did actually there were 2 one-act plays. One of them was Eugene O'Neill's Huey, and the other one was Krapp's Last Tape. And Krapp's Last Tape is just a man and a tape recorder. And Huey is just one man and a hotel desk operator who doesn't have more than 7 lines to say in the entire show. That's very lonely work.
Oh, I imagine it is. What about forgetting lines? I mean, when you're all by yourself, you better have them down pat.
You're dead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in that vein, what about, have you ever forgotten lines with an ensemble?
Yes, I have. Fairly recently, I was doing a play with my daughter, Proof, which is about a mathematician who has passed and going back and looking at the story of when his daughter was taking care of him, and she finds a proof that he was working on. But my daughter was brilliant in the part, just brilliant. And I found one performance. I was sitting there, and she was doing a beautiful, beautiful monologue, and she got to the end of it, and it was my turn to talk, and I had no idea what I was supposed to say.
So what do you do?
I looked at her and said, I don't have a thing to say. And she knew I was up, and she picked us up, and she got us back on the story. And I thought, this is it. This is what I was worried about all my life, is I'm going to reach a certain age and the memory's going.
Oh.
And
well,
next night, same thing happened at the same spot.
I'll be darned.
I thought, now there's something wrong here. And I realized what it was. I was so entranced watching my daughter work that I dropped out of my character, and I was just dad sitting there gloating for my daughter.
Became part of the audience,
Yeah.
in effect. How about pranks on stage? I've heard some wonderful stories about pranks that actors pull on each other sometimes.
Yeah. It's kind of going out of style because I think too many pranks were played for too many times and actually got in the way of the show. If the prank is simple enough, I think it can go on forever. We've had shows where your drink is handed to you and it's got a goldfish swimming in it. And, just little things like that. You go ahead and drink because what else are you going to do? That's what you're called on to do. But it's, again, they just kind of got in the way after a while, and people backed off from that. And I'm very glad of it because I'm one of those who goes easy. If something like that is pulled on me, I can lose my character pretty quickly because I appreciate the prank so much.
I remember hearing a story once of 2 actors who performed a lot together, and they were always pranking each other. And at one occasion in a scene, there was a telephone in the room, and it rang, and it wasn't supposed to. And it was in a position where one of the actors had to pick it up because the phone was ringing. And he picked it up, and he said, "Hello? It's for you." handed it back to the guy who had pulled the prank. That's kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, that's not bad.
You've performed on the Muny stage,
Yes,
which is enormous.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about appearing in a venue that is that large. The audience is large and the stage is enormous.
Yeah.
That's got to somehow affect what you do.
It does, and you realize fairly soon that you're basically doing a radio show because the audience is so far away from you, they can't see what your face is doing. And so, whatever you're doing with your facial acting, that's for your fellow actor. It has nothing to do with the audience. And the other thing that was upsetting to me the first couple of times that I worked out there was one, the show starts at 8:15 at night. In the summertime, that's still light. Mm-hmm. And when you walk out on that stage for the first time and see 11,000 people out there, that's daunting, to say the very least.
It has to be. By the way, what's wrong with doing a radio show?
Nothing at all. As a matter of fact, I love radio, so that's why we're saying it's just like doing a radio show. That's a joy for me.
Have you done much radio? I mean, what have you done?
Well, mostly it's been commercial work and that kind of thing. There was a period when I guess 90% of the commercials were done in St. Louis. So that there was a lot of commercial work for actors here, and also true for film work. And that has dropped off quite a bit in the last few years.
I wonder why.
I think a lot of it had to do with a strike that AFTRA SAG had, maybe 15 years ago, something like that. And so the work was cut off pretty much for about 6 months. And I think a lot of producers looked for different ways to do it after that.
I think a lot has to do with the digital age, too.
Sure.
A lot of people can do it right in their living room
Yeah.
or their bedroom or wherever they want to do it.
Yeah, we're finding that true. Not also with auditions. Same thing. Somebody will say, can you send me an audition tape? And I don't have a studio. And they say, well, just pick up your camera and tape yourself and send that to us. And
How has theater work changed over the time that you've been in it, the 50, close to 60 years?
Well, there's a lot more theater now, and there's a lot more varied theater now than there used to be. When I first came to St. Louis, there were only like 4 theaters. And now there are, 13 or something like that. So there's a lot more work. And I think there's a lot more interesting work being done. People are taking a lot more chances now.
We've only a few seconds left. St. Louis is a pretty good theater town, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's been a gift to us.
Yeah. Well, that's what's kept you around for a long time, Joneal Joplin. We hope you're going to be around for a lot longer as well.
Thanks, Don.
It's been a great run.
That. Yes, it has.
Fun
I hope
life.
it continues.
Any regrets?
None at all.
All righty. Well, we're so happy to have you in St. Louis and remark all the time about all the success that you've had. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Don.
Episodes of St. Louis on the Air are available at stlpublicradio.org, or you can subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts, the Google Podcast app, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU. Thank you for listening. I'm Don Marsh.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.